Hello, I think today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking to our resident Einstein, Callum Barnes, about his work. So yeah, I am Eric DeGolier, CEO and founder of Body Rocket. And Callum, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Callum Barnes, and I'm a PhD student working with Body Rocket at the University of Kent.
Great. So, yeah, today we're going to be talking talking all about the work that you've been doing. It covers a span of things, but I think, yeah, the most interesting sort of the highlights of it have been the work that you've been doing with shuffling and then with position identification. So we'll get into that, but I wanted to just start with a little bit of an introduction about how you got involved in Body Rocket. Obviously, you were, I shouldn't say obviously, but you are already a cyclist, more of an avid mountain biker, but you know your way around a bike, and you had just finished up your undergrad in physics, and we're looking to do a PhD, and we were working with the University of Kent to place someone for that role. And you really stood out because in your final interview, we'd given a data set to you, and you came back and told us,
well, with your data, I've been able to identify 4 distinct positions of your rider who was in a wind tunnel. Beautiful data set provided by the Body Rocket system, and something I really wanted to show off in that final interview.
Yeah, which really caught us by surprise. So for people who aren't familiar with the Body Rocket system, it directly measures drag force on the bicycle, but it does that through 4 different contact points, and each one of those points is measuring a handful of things. And so we end up with 70-odd channels of data, which is the perfect situation for machine learning. And yeah, you were able to take that data. If I recall correctly, it wasn't quite that brilliant. You were able to identify 3 different positions. So you had 2 that were good and 2 that they definitely weren't the other ones, but you couldn't separate them out. And you said, if I had a day, I could probably do this.
You have me on time pressure for that interview. Okay, so
yeah, but we'll get back to that because there's more to that story. But the next time we saw you, kind of sets the stage for some of your early work, and that was we met you after we had invited you on, and you sort of won the role to do the PhD work. We invited you up to one of our very first velodrome days with Alex Dowsett at the Lee Valley Velodrome, and obviously a very exciting day for the entire team. It was really early on in our getting out there and working with athletes, but we saw Alex doing some very unusual stuff on the day that ultimately concluded was him constantly shuffling on the saddle or sort of resetting his position to the point where we had one of the people on the infield going, you can see it, like every time he comes out of that corner he's resetting, and we were able to go into the data and look at that, and that gave us some ideas, and I think ultimately, this is the only part where I'm going to claim any sort of intellectual credit. I'm pretty sure that I came back to you or to the team and I said, we've got all the information to identify the position here. We're looking at the moments and the forces. We've got every piece of information but where the rider is sitting, and so we can go and back solve for that. And we did that, but then you took it and ran from there and said, hey, I can actually automate this.
Exactly. So I was told my very first project in my PhD to investigate the impact of shuffling on a rider's aerodynamics and their power output. And well, I was jumped straight in the deep end. Here's some massive data sets from our sponsored rider, Christian Blumenfeld. A bit overwhelmed. I was working with data from the Olympic world champion at the time, and still is at time of recording now. I was blown away by how rich the data set was and how you could determine the position of someone on the saddle. So, as Eric mentioned, we have some very basic forces that go into the saddle, and some very simple high school mathematics can help you determine the position on the bike. What I did was take this stream of positional data and do some very basic signal processing to determine when someone shuffled and how much they shuffled. And then from there, because I know when everyone shuffles, I can take a look at the impact on their CDA and the impact on their power. One aspect of this, though, had me a little bit, I wouldn't say, had me curious. And that was validating that the body rocket system was, from the force perspective, determining the position on the saddle properly.
Yeah, well, as a PhD researcher, you were sort of obligated to go out and take this to a different level than us going, hey, it works, which is, from a commercial level, we are sometimes want to do. But yeah, so you came up with a novel system that actually made us all the way to GTN. We caught their attention with some of the work that you were doing, and that was your shuffle cam system. So you don't happen to have that sitting on the desk next to you, do you?
Well, by chance, I do. Here it is, the beautiful.
We didn't plan this, but I suspect.
Shuffle cam. No, it wasn't planned at all. But here we have the beautiful shuffle cam, a novel piece of engineering per se, which uses a infrared camera, an infrared LED flash ring to shine light onto the rear of a cyclist and determine how far away they are on the saddle with some bespoke computer vision software that I wrote.
Yeah, and for those who've been following our story, I'm not sure it was entirely clear, that was there to prove out the value of the body rocket system. It wasn't like a new addition to the body rocket system, as aesthetically pleasing as it was on a bike. It was there to prove everything out. But ultimately, that's work that you've completed and been able to show that the body rocket system is in fact quite precise in terms of monitoring location on the bike.
Precisely, and in post-process, I may even be able to put a graph up now.
Yeah, well, I think that was just, it was important to do that. But the reason we did it because we had questions about, does shuffling affect your aerodynamics first, because that's what we're all about. But then also, does it affect your power? Because we're interested in aerodynamics because it's this big open area where there's huge gains available for going faster. There's not a good tool that people have constant access to, right? Wind tunnels obviously very, very precise and useful, but they are a testing bed that you have to go to the lab, to the wind tunnel every time that you want to do something, and so access is still limited. And I think that's why you still see so much change in terms of aerodynamics. Is that for limited time, the learning takes forever, right? If you gave people 10 times as much access to aerodynamic data, then the pace of development would go 10 times faster. So we got that going, and then we set you up with a day's worth of riders to go out and do some testing on this. And so we captured different people shuffling and found the answer to the question, is shuffling bad? And the answer, of course, it depends.
Exactly. Everyone is unique. And,
yeah.
When combing through the data, you could see there were some riders that every time they shuffled, they saw a corresponding increase in power. Kind of makes sense. They push on the pedals as they move themselves back. But then a decrease in their CDA. So in that perspective, is it really that bad? Is that trade-off worth it? However, other riders, and there was one rider in particular who shuffled a total of 19 times throughout a 4-kilometer pursuit effort. Every single time this rider shuffled, there was a spike in their CDA and a drop in their power. Clearly, for this rider, they need to work on their shuffling and maybe get a decent bike fit out of it.
It's actually over a year ago that we did that now, but if I recall, it was something ridiculous, like 14 seconds over, what would be a 4.5 minute event for a okay national level. 4 minutes for the good ones now. So yeah, some huge differences. So I think we have definitely answered the question of is shuffling important? For some people, it's definitely important. And we're going to be getting into some more work coming up very soon to expand that study and to start to understand exactly what the value is. But before we go to that, that actually earned you a spot at the Science and Cycling Conference at the start of the Tour de France. So you were invited to be a speaker there.
I was, and it was a pleasure to present there. In Bilbao, such a beautiful place. At the start of the Tour de France, it was fantastic to talk about my work on shuffling and, give everyone a little taste of how awesome the body rocket system is. And it really did help shed light, because at the conference, Eric, you were there too, there was so many researchers using the Jebamize system.
Mm.
And it's a fantastic system, the way it maps pressure. You can see exactly why people use it. However, well, with the body rocket system, you can determine the position of someone on the saddle. It would be really interesting to see how the two systems can work together to help people find out more about the physiology.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I left with the feeling like there's a lot of sort of lab or best velodrome based, data and short-term stuff, because you have to put a layer in between your saddle to put this pressure mapping in. It just felt like this was a natural extension, right? We can take that layer out and still get a lot of information, not pressure information, but position information and loading information for athletes over much longer periods of time, and then without the sort of added layer that takes away the realism, right? You're not sitting on your saddle, you're sitting on this pressure pad. So to be able to take that out into the real world in longer periods of time, really exciting stuff. So it definitely is shown a light on how much research opportunity there is outside of the aerodynamics stuff for body rocket, which gets into things that we're just starting to scratch the surface of, which is the biomechanics, right? So what ways can body rocket get used in terms of biomechanics and stuff? But that is a story for another day, because that's not the tact that you took. You surprised us by coming back and saying, hey, remember that data set you gave me, in my interview? And with that, you came back and well, I'll let you talk about what you came back with.
Well, I decided, now that I've done shuffling, it was still, it's still a area that we're going to continue pursuing. And if you do want to go onto the Journal of Science of Cycling, you can see the abstract which I submitted. You can have a read over that. But soon enough, we'll get a full publication with some testing that we have booked very soon.
We can probably put a link to that.
Yes. And so after all this and waiting for some more testing to come about, I thought, let's go back to my interview. Let's take a look at this data set from the University of Southampton wind tunnel and see, I said, give me another day and I can separate the fourth. Well, let's see if I could. And lo and behold, I was able to. Was it a day?
Was it only a day?
Maybe a day and a half, but we won't talk about that. We'll round down. But after looking at some literature and my previous experience working with Santander Bank, I was able to apply a model that's commonly used in finance and economics to differentiate the different positions that someone was sitting on the bike in the wind tunnel.
Right.
I did this with one data set from the University of Southampton wind tunnel and one from a data set where a long time ago you visited Eindhoven and a data set there as well. So I was able to distinguish the 4 different positions that you're tested in there. And
those are 2 different athletes as well, actually. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Different athletes, different bodies. Really exciting, because this model that I produced could tell you real time what position you are in.
Yeah, which is really exciting. I think because we've been working with athletes this year, we kind of knew we were going to get to this stage. Once you have easy access to aerodynamic data, and you can see the changes, the next question is, well, why? And some of it's sort of obvious. If you did 2 tests with 2 different helmets, well, one would hope it was the helmet that was the issue. But when you're having athletes go out for longer periods of time and you're seeing changes, it's often hard to answer those questions. What did change? Why? And so to be able to identify the postures they're in and go back and tell them, you actually changed your posture here, and that's what happened, then is really, really valuable data. When we think about aerodynamics right now as a sort of kind of one and done, right? You go to the wind tunnel, you test 6 things, whichever one is fastest, and you were in the position for this 30 seconds each for the positions. Whichever one is fastest, that's your new position until the next time you're going to go into the wind tunnel. But it's kind of preposterous on the face of it, because even in the wind tunnel, they've got to picture profile of how your position started out, so that you can hold it perfectly for the 30 seconds, because they know that you can't hold it for the 30 seconds, and that you're going to get a much broader scatter of the data and stuff if you don't have that kind of information. But of course, you don't have that information when you're out in the real world. In the real world, our bodies are moving all over the place, and in the wind tunnel, you're not even having to navigate road furniture or traffic, go up and down hills, or put out the kind of power that you have to put out. And so the idea that you are holding a CDA, particularly to the sort of levels that we're looking at in the wind tunnel, the fine, the precision that they have, it's kind of silly. But without any better tools, we don't have a way to get into that. Well, we're making that tool, but then immediately goes to the question of, well, then what happened? And so, so we've got that now. That was really great, but it was a wind tunnel. And so there was always the question of, okay, that's a pretty controlled environment still. How do we do outdoors? And so we grabbed the opportunity when a friend of Body Rocket, Tom Epton, came by to check out the system, and we got him out on a velodrome, an outdoor velodrome. Well, it's Preston Park. It has 4 distinct corners, an uphill and a downhill. It's called a velodrome. Maybe cycle path is a better description of it. But we got him out on that, and we're able to replicate that test. And I'll let you talk about it again. But my perspective, and I kind of jump in and out of these things as someone who's got 100 things on his mind all the time, is that you were able to identify positions to the same level of precision. There wasn't even really a drop off.
Indeed, I was able to identify the positions to exactly the same level for a rider outdoors, riding a bike as you would normally ride a bike.
Up and down a little hill.
Up and down with a little bit of an incline as well. So being able to we're getting to that ability, starting to move towards that capability of jumping out on the bike and knowing what position you are whilst you go out just on a bike ride, which is super exciting and starts to answer that question that everyone's asking. Now I've got my aerodynamic data.
Yeah.
What on earth can I do with it? Well,
yeah,
maybe the answer.
Not everyone yet, just because we've only had our alpha testing systems out there. But,
yes.
We are on the verge of building 25 beta testing units, and these are more robust, closer to the consumer product, and something that we're going to be rolling out to our beta testing group, and these units will actually be left with athletes to test and train with and try to break, of course, as we make our way to a consumer product. We have to let people try to do that. So that was really huge to see you be able to do that outdoors. It is, once we've learned an athlete, we will be able to tell you on your screen, not just your CDA, but what position you're in. And there is already research out there showing that if you have feedback on your position, if you've come out of your optimum position, if you have the feedback to know that, you can be 1.5 to 3% more aerodynamic over the course of an event. And those are short events as well. So it's lab testing that's how stuff was done in. So I won't be surprised if we see the changes are larger in the real world. But this enables that now, where we've got something that, honestly, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, well, you need some sort of a camera hanging off the side of your bike to be able to tell you that. Obviously, there are some competitive systems out there that look at your chin and look at your sort of facial area, which is one component of your changes. We've got something that is a quite more comprehensive system. In fact, if we should really be showing some of the data around that. So Tom, we've got pictures of Tom. He's gone out and he's in his 3 positions, and you are using a program to then identify. Well, let me hand back over to you. Why don't you tell us what you're doing?
Yes, so I've used a neural network or convolutional neural network based program to take an image of a rider, and with the rider in the image, it's able to identify the joints of the rider. From that, you can obviously look at the head angle, back angle, and general form the rider is taking, this is very much in its early stages of research, but I will be progressing my research in this direction to gets much more continuous positional data.
Yeah.
What's on
What I think is cool is it illustrates how subtle the changes are.
Yes.
I mean, we certainly didn't have him change positions on the like any handlebar, anything on the bike, right? We just asked him to find 4 different positions within the context of the bike setup that he was riding in. So this really does mimic the kind of stuff that you would do out in the real world if you know. Traffic, or feel the need to have a little better visibility than many people have in their TT position. What happens? You start to fatigue, and so the ability, and this is where if you're overlaying these now, this is where you can actually take a look afterwards and understand, well, this is what I'm doing, right? And then so the research out there just says, look, if we tell you that you're out of your position, you can go find your position again, but we're adding a layer on top of that just visually says this is what you're doing. So now when answering that question, why did my CDA change? We've got a tool that outside of the wind tunnel, and the wind tunnel you're not changing because you're not in a challenging situation. Outside of the wind tunnel, nobody's seen it before. This is pretty exciting stuff. So an amazing layer to be able to add on to what we're doing, and opening up. This is kind of funny because it goes back into sort of a lab setting again, opening up the possibility that once we've learned you, we can help you train to your ideal position while you're indoors on a turbo. Because once we know what that position looks like, we can tell you whether you're in that position, whether you're indoors or outdoors. Which is pretty wild to think. And certainly in the world of triathlon, a lot of athletes, even at the professional level, spend a lot of time on their indoor trainers, just to maximize the quality of their riding, because they've got so much work to do in a day with 3 sports. So I think sort of another unintended impact that is really exciting and something that we're going to be digging into over the next year as well. Yeah,
and the additional scope of having distinct positions is being able to fine-tune your position for different conditions. At the end of the day, the human body is inherently squishy and dynamic, and wind conditions are different in so many other places. You have crosswinds, open sections, especially on an endurance event.
Yeah, and we think of that as bad right now, right? So we're trying as hard as we can to just hold the exact same position the whole time, when in fact, when you've got full understanding of your aerodynamics, and that one position may be better for you in a crosswind than what your ideal headwind position is, as well as your ability to hold a position over time, we can start to make intelligent decisions. And yeah, absolutely, I see setups being different, even for the same course on a different day, just because the winds have changed. So yeah. Really excited to be getting into that and expanding the group of athletes that we'll be working with, which is the next thing I wanted to talk about. So we are just hopefully 2 to 4 weeks away from ordering our batch of 25 beta test units. And these are slated for a range of testing. There's going to be a bunch of indoor testing where we have athletes come and they spend a day with us, and then they get to work on their aerodynamics, and then we just add them to this data set that you're using to learn about things like shuffling and position as well. But then we're also going to be leaving kit with athletes. And so that is obviously, we are very interested in working with some high-level athletes. We work with 2 of the best triathletes in the world. We're expanding that out to include some high-level road athletes, as well as finally moving into working with some women athletes as well. We've got some exciting announcements to make there. So that'll be going on over the winter in velodromes, and then as we get into the spring, expanding and going out into athletes on the road, which is going to allow you to not only finish off a lot of the work and do the publishing of things that you've got pretty well along right now, but to start to turn that around, because right now everything is establishing we can tell you this, and of course the next question is, what can you do with that information? And that's going to be a really fun one to take on, to be able to then go back and tell an athlete, this is what you need to do, or you need to try these things, but to be able to make that actionable is going to be really, really exciting stuff. And this is for my background in power meters, this reminds me of that whole journey that we went on with training stress score and FTP and critical power, and finding those sort of metrics. We're just at the very beginning stages of that with aerodynamics and with body rocket.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
Yeah. So, look, I really appreciate your time. I've been looking forward to having this catch up with you. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap things up?
I think we've covered all the major exciting things. Just want to say again how exciting it is that we can identify different positions on the bike. It is something that may seem so simple, but it is truly something really exciting. I look forward to digging into it further as soon as more and more data comes out.
Yeah, far from simple. I mean, nobody's doing it right now, right? So
Well,
at least not on a bike. So
trying to be humble.
yeah, so really looking forward to what you come up with next. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks to everyone for watching. We're going to try to do a few more of these. Our team is full of fascinating people doing some really cool work, and so we'll try to do a few more of these as we go through the winter as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
All right.